Hey, I'm Dave, and you're listening to another episode of Dying to Listen podcast presented by the Disc Golf Dyers Guild. Today we have Tim from Tar Heel Custom Discs. He dyes some discs for a very unique customer, so we're going to hear all about that. Tim, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being on the show.
So, what got you started into playing disc golf?
So, believe it or not, my story actually starts off with me playing with my dogs. So I originally started off in 2015 getting to the sport of disc dogs, where you throw dog-safe discs for your dog and they catch it. And they get scored about how far they catch it. Some games require you to jump into certain zones, and it's like timed. And I actually was playing disc dogs with a couple different organizations for about 4 years. And then a really good friend of mine, who was also a legend in the disc dog sport, Gary Duke, said, you should try disc golf. I think you'd like it, and it would really help you learn about how to control the disc. You'll learn a bit, just go out and play. So I'm like, that sounds fun. Let's try it out. So I went out to a local course with my dog-safe discs, not knowing any better, and the rest was history. And I got really into it. And now I'm a disc dog and disc golfer, as I call myself.
That's awesome. What got you into the dog? What is that called again?
Disc dogs.
Disc dogs.
Updog is one of the organizations I mostly compete with. Updog Challenge. So when you ask me what's up, dog, you know the answer.
What got you started into doing that?
So I have, at the time, I had two very energetic Labrador retrievers. And we would take them to dog parks, and I'd throw the ball, and they would outrun any other dog there. And someone just happened to be at the dog park and said, you should try, like, dog sports. And I'm like, dog sports? What the heck is that? Like, yeah, like, there are, like, actual sports you can play with your dog. She's very athletic. You should try it out. So I'm like, why not? So we got into dock diving, which is where dogs jump off a dock into a pool. And that kind of started our career of dog sports. And we were involved in a bunch of different dock diving. And in 2015, we were at a competition, and there was a disc dog competition in the field right across from where the dock was. So we kind of meandered over there, just kind of checked it out. And it turns out they were actually taking walk-ons. So I'm like, I can't throw a Frisbee to save my life, but why not? Like, we've got like 4 hours to kill here. Let's try it. And a very nice lady just walked right up to me, introduced herself, and said, here's how you play. Just get out there and do it. And then after that, I totally stunk on ice. I was terrible. I barely knew how to throw, but I was really intrigued by it. So I got a couple of discs, went out in the field, practiced with my dog, and very quickly I noticed improvements. And I was able to throw for my dog. And then we got another dog, and then another dog, and then they were all competing. And it's been a wild ride for sure.
Wow, that's crazy how something can just snowball into something else. But that is awesome. Did your dogs actually like chasing and catching the Frisbee? Absolutely.
She had so much drive. My original dog, Nala, she's currently 9, about to turn 10. She has so much drive. She wants to go get anything that's thrown, will bring it back, just always wants to play. I have to work her every day, or else she'll just tear up the house. All my dogs are super high drive dogs. You have to work them. They're not exactly the best pets. They're working dogs, so they really require that energetic playtime. Whether it be mental or physical exercise, they require it.
Yeah. No, this is really piquing my interest because I have 2 standard poodles. I don't know how much they would want to catch a Frisbee, but something to try. I've always wanted to try dock diving with them. to see if they would even like it. But
oh, it's so much fun. It's like we're traveling close to 25, 27 weeks out of the year for some type of dog event, whether mostly dock dogs, and then on the weekends, mostly during the fall, winter, and spring, we do disc, because during the summer, it just gets too hot here in North Carolina. So we tend to stick to disc during the cooler months, and then when it's dock diving, it's out in the sun at the pool and jumping off the dock.
The other thing that I want to try that I don't know the technical name for it is, it's a line that runs on the ground with that little furry thing that they chase.
Yeah, that's what we call fast cat.
Yes, that's what it was.
Coursing ability test.
Yeah.
In fact, this past weekend, I literally was the hunt master, or the kind of like the person who runs the lure for an event for a bunch of brand new dogs. So it's pretty cool. I'm pretty heavily involved in dog sports. I got my hand in running a bunch of them. But when I'm not playing with my dogs, you can usually find me on the disc golf course.
That's awesome. I still have a bunch more questions before we actually get into the dying questions. But if someone wanted to get their dog into some sort of dog sport, I mean, how would someone find something or even get involved?
So there are a bunch of different organizations that you can get involved in. Disc Dog is, believe it or not, a worldwide sport. The one particular organization I do a lot of work with is called Toss and Fetch League. Think of it like a bowling league, but for disc dogs. And it's a 5 concurrent week session or season where our club, Tar Heel Toss and Fetch, competes against 140 clubs all around the world, and we all compete on the same 5 weeks. And then we submit our scores, and then being judged at each individual club, and then we compete against each other every season. So that's one avenue. Very, very casual. You get to learn. I always recommend people who are brand new, go find a near Toss and Fetch League or a Updog disc club where you can get involved. Very, very newbie friendly. You can just show up. Most of the clubs have extra discs lying around where they can get you involved. And then, mostly your dog has to have a little bit of drive. They have to want to be able to chase something. Throwing rollers is a great way to get a young dog or even an older dog. Kind of everything ties back to disc golf, right? So like my roller game for disc golf is pretty mean because I can throw a mean roller for disc dogs. So it always applies back. But yeah, working with your dog, doing rollers first and short throws, and always have another disc to trade them with. And they'll start to get the game that it's like chasing a ball. And eventually they'll start to get the game where you can keep going and throw like 10, 12, 15 throws for them and then take a break. Like 5-10 minute short sessions. You don't want to overwork them. You don't want to kill these dogs, right? But usually when I tell people when they want to train their dog for a disc dog, a lot of short sessions. And one of the secrets of the pros, if you will, I like to tell people, if your dog doesn't like playing with discs, go ahead and take a Frisbee like this, put their kibble right in the disc, feed them from the Frisbee, then go play with it. The crumbs and all. They'll associate, especially if your dog is food driven, they'll associate that disc with that food, and then all of a sudden, oh, this is a fun toy to play with. It reminds me of the food I just ate.
That is a really good idea. Do you have any issues with your dogs eating up your actual disc golf discs?
So I take very extra special care to make sure my disc golf discs don't get mixed up with my dog safe discs. In fact, my dogs, I pretty much teach them to leave them alone. And I try not to throw my disc golf discs around my dogs because they will go get them. And they will try and snag them out of the air. My dogs would not be the type of dogs I can take to a disc golf course. They're not the best caddies, if you will. They're terrible. They would be barking incessantly. They'd be running over the course, chasing Frisbees flying through the air, and I take very special care to make sure, because disc golf discs are not the best discs for dogs. In fact, I've seen quite a few dogs get teeth knocked out from throwing a disc golf disc and dogs catching it and just bam, smash. So I always recommend dog safe discs from like Hero Disc USA. That's who I primarily throw, both in the backyard and competitively. There's other companies like Hyperflight. They also have a dog safe disc. Believe it or not, Latitude 64 has the Opto Bite disc, which is dog safe for our European viewers who can't get Hero Disc. And I believe Whammo still has the fastbacks that are dog safe. You can get them. I forget who carries them. I think it's Discovering the World might still have them. But yeah, I mostly throw Hero Disc. That's what I like to throw. They die the best. And I found a couple of plastic types that really work for my dog that are safe but durable. Like they'll last a long time.
What makes a dog safe discs? Like, what's the difference between one of those and something that you would throw on the course?
Great question. A lot of it is, believe it or not, weight. Most dog safe discs are going to be under 150 grams, and the design of the disc allow for a dog to bite down on it. So like, think of it like a destroyer that has a really hard brim. Well, that's got a lot of force when it hits something. Imagine like throwing a disc and it hitting a tree. Well, you got to think that's hitting a dog's teeth and mouth. So you kind of keep that in mind. So believe it or not, the Garrett Girthy Sonic is actually the same mold that I throw that's dog safe. And in fact, this is actually one of the first discs I dyed. This is a Hero Supersonic 215, and it's in what we call taffy plastic, but it's more tuned to like Star. But this is only about 123 grams compared to a disc golf disc, which may be 168 and above, all the way up to 180.
So what actually got you into disc dyeing?
So actually, when I got into disc golf for the first time, and that had been, it was literally right at the beginning of the pandemic. It was like February 2020. I went out for the first time, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get out and play a lot of disc golf. And then the pandemic hit, and everything shut down. Disc golf didn't really shut down, but like, when that in certain time, I'm like, wow, of course, my luck. I get into something that I absolutely and become obsessed with. I think that day after I left the course, I went out to my local disc golf shop, and I probably dropped easily $300 in discs. I'm like 0 to 100. There is no in between. I'm either all in or I'm not. So I got like all these, and I didn't know what I was grabbing. Like one of the guys in the shop was saying, "Oh, get a putter, mid-range, fairway driver." And I actually got a Innova starter kit and ordered a bunch of other discs on top of it. I was very lucky because the discs I ordered and grabbed that day were all Star plastic. So that will foreshadow to you in a little bit. But yeah, I did a tournament. A Flex Start tournament, I think in like August, maybe late July, August of 2020. And one of my card mates whipped out a disc that had like this awesome design with like the Batman logo on it. I'm like, oh, where'd you get that disc? He goes, one of my buddies is a disc dyer. I'm like, disc dyeing? Like, that sounds cool. He goes, yeah, like there's a whole community out there that does it. You should check it out on YouTube. So I'm like, that's like that. Me having zero artistic background, like I couldn't draw anything to save my life for it. So of course, how most people got involved into disc dyeing, I come across Bobby from T Diddy, and I watched some of his shows, and I actually had him commissioned him to do a disc for me. So one of my dogs, his name is Earnhardt, from Dale Earnhardt of the NASCAR fame. And I'm a big Earnhardt fan growing up, like even Dale Jr. and just racing in general, Formula One, MotoGP, like any type of racing. I grew up racing when I was a young kid, so I just love anything racing. So when I got Earnhardt, I'm like, I should get an Earnhardt disc, just to what the heck, why not? So then Bobby, I tell him, he goes, well, like, here's what I have. I'm like, let's get a Wraith. I don't know what a Wraith is, but like, let's get it. Why not? And he gives me this. And the coolest thing about it was when he was doing his live streams, I actually got to watch him make the disc live. And I ended up with this bad boy. And this inspired the heck out of me because when I received this disc, he had actually handwritten a note that says, no matter what your passions are, just go out and do it. The difference is doing it, as his name is known. So that kind of lit a fire to my butt. I'm like, you know what? I should do this. I should try it. And so I grabbed some of my Disc Dog discs, and my first ever disc was a shaving cream bed with some iodide poly, red, yellow, orange. And I live streamed it on Facebook. I'm like, hey guys, I'm trying something new called disc dyeing. I maybe had 3 people watching, but like I was inspired by Bobby from T Diddy. And then from there, I found the Disc Dyers page on Facebook, as most of us have. And I started networking with people. And that's how I got to learn all about disc dyeing and different techniques. But when I was just getting started, like I was seeing these amazing, incredible pieces. And meanwhile, I have this. This is my second disc I've ever done. Oh, there you go. My second disc I've ever done. And I'm like, compare this to some of the stuff I was seeing on Facebook. I'm like, I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm not artistic. But like color theory and all that really intrigued me. So at that point, like I said, 0 to 100. At that point, I got every single dye that was available on Pro Chemical and Dye. I got every iodide poly. I got every worm dip. I got every medium I could find. And at that point, like I tried not to just copy what other people were doing. I really tried to experiment and find my own way. And that's just how I am in general. I'm a tinker. I like to figure things out. And from there, I just started trying new stuff. And I would see what would happen if I left the bit in for 12 hours versus 24 hours. I had a long weekend. I left a disc in there for 72 hours. And like, oh, wow, the longer you leave it in, the more saturated it gets. Or maybe I didn't put enough dye in that lotion, and maybe I didn't shake it up enough. Man, what I know now, when knowing back then, I would have saved myself quite a bit of time and the amount of disc that ended up just giving away to people that were, not the best dyes, but still, you got to go out there and try it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome that Bobby dyed a disc for you, and his note inspired you to do it. I feel like I'm the same way, where I like to tinker, and I'm all in on something. So that's awesome and funny. I feel like you've tried all methods, but what methods have you tried for dyeing?
So started off like most people with a shaving cream bed. Mm-hmm. Then I went to, it was like kind of like in waves. I tried not to follow the trend, but I was looking what other people were doing to see, maybe I should try that sometime. So naturally went to lotions, and I tried all the different lotions. Of course, as most people have, Queen Helen's reigns supreme on the lotion. And checking out at Walmart with 20 bottles of Queen Helen will raise some eyebrows.
Yeah. I did that, and I had like a bunch of paper towel. Yeah. So
it was very, very interesting. And then I tried both clear and white glue. Then I tried like dish detergent. I tried dish detergent mixed with lotion. I tried I think I even tried mayonnaise at one point. That did not turn out well. I was just, I tried anything and everything. I think I tried mixing dye with olive oil. Does not do what you think it would. It just makes it clumpy. But I was trying new stuff, just experimenting, having fun with it, and trying not to. I mean, just a quarter of a teaspoon of dye, kind of goes a long way when you're, buy, a giant thing of dye. Yeah. Like this is 8 ounces of dye. A quarter of a teaspoon will go quite a bit when you're experimenting.
That's awesome that you took the initiative to experiment and literally try different things. In your experimentation in general, was there any like surprises or aha moments that you found?
The one thing I really wish I'd found out much earlier was that you can reuse glue beds. I was going through glue very, very quickly. And I would make these really crazy glue designs. And I just remember being like, I am going through so much glue and I am breaking some little child's heart that's been trying to get a hold of this glue for slime. And we're in the middle of a pandemic and I'm just buying up glue as much as I can, just because I knew I was going to need it. Not like I was trying to hoard it, but I was buying it by the case at that point. And I wish I had learned that sooner. And still to this day, even with what I'm now on with Floetrol, hard pressed to not me doing a minimum of 12 generations in a bed. So I go the distance with my beds. A little bit more economical that way, for sure. But when you start adding Floetrol and different colors, eventually you're going to muddy up where it's just coming to become brown. But there are some things you can do to kind of rejuvenate that color just by swirling it around in the pan or adding just straight white Floetrol, and it will change that brown into maybe a deep mahogany or rich maroon. And then you can color that with, complementary colors and make it into a nice crimson red and pair that with a neon lemon zest or something like that, and now you're back in the game, baby. Now that 12th generation bed goes 13, 14, 15, and then you're like, you know what? I'm starting to run out of Floetrol now. Maybe I should retire this bed and clean out the pan.
That's awesome. I find it fascinating that a lot of disc dyers don't claim to be artists, but you're still creating art. You basically learned art through disc dyeing?
Yeah, and you know what? Something I kind of failed to mention is that, believe it or not, Tar Heel Custom Discs is not just me. I actually have 2 friends of mine that are disc doggers that saw what I was doing and they want to try it. So I'm like, come over to my house, let's have a dyeing party. And then the bug bit them, and we're a collection of 3. So my good buddy Kevin Johnson and Jennifer Bell O'Connell, they're my co-dyers when we started Tar Heel Custom Disc. We're all equal owners to the company. And between the 3 of us, we all found our little niche that of our artistic style that people seem to love. So when you look at the Tar Heel Instagram, if you know us, you can kind of picture, oh, that's a Tim dye, that's Kevin, that's Jennifer. If it's a big floral pattern, it's probably Jen. Her glue beds are fantastic. Whereas I like to go a little bit cellular. I've been really experimenting with the cells. Different swipe patterns with saran wrap. I've been doing a lot of that lately. But also we'll kick it back with a good old fashioned lotion dye. And I have dabbled in stencils. I actually have my silhouette Cameo 4 behind me. But it's kind of interesting with stencils for Disc Dog discs. So maybe someone from the guild can help me out with this one. So like for Hero discs, they have these rings that are called the Rings of Hedrick. They're actually meant for not just grip, but also aerodynamics to help keep the disc stable. So these rings are a pain when it comes to getting adhesion for vinyl, and often is a trap for dye and creates a lot of bubbles. So I had to become very, very proficient in rolling a disc into a bed to try and prevent that as much as possible. In fact, I think it was Keith that said, about breaking surface tension. Many a times, especially on your show, that really is 100% true. Like the way you have to roll a bed in the disc, especially when you have to deal with those rings, it definitely makes a difference. Just putting it straight down, like the old Berg bubble, it's very, very susceptible to that, and you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a unique challenge with those ridges. You mentioned breaking the surface tension, but do you have any trade secrets that you found to help reduce trapping the air in those?
So definitely do yourself a favor and get rid of as many air bubbles from the surface of the bed as possible. In fact, I have it right here. My creme brulee little torch this is my go-to. This is my ride and die right here. This helps get rid of so many bubbles to at least set you up for success. But taking your time, and I have a really nice light that's next to my dye station where if I'm pointing it right down at the disc, and because these discs have a white background, when I lay it down into the disc, I can kind of see when the bed and the disc have made contact, and I can literally watch it ride all the way through. Until it's all the way down. And then I give it like a little bit of push. I try not to mush it down. I think that's a mistake I made in the very beginning. Not bottoming out, but just give it a little push, kind of, roll it around a little bit. I wouldn't say lift it, because I think that might create an air bubble, but just enough to where if there is any bubbles, it's going to work its way to the edges.
So if you do have bubbles, how do you mitigate that?
Generally speaking, if there's a bubble and there's nothing I can do about it, most of the time I'll let it ride. I may be able to go in and hit it with some worm dip, but if it's like part of like, a cell dye or something like that, I might be able to take like saran wrap or a sponge and just take, like, if I've did like a saran wrap dip, I'll just take a sponge and just dip it into this excess dye and just try and dab over it and try and cover it up. But I've gotten, knock on wood, I've gotten really good at mitigating it. But sometimes there's just nothing you can do. Mm-hmm. If it's just part of the design, it is what it is. And most people don't seem to really mind it because they're not really looking for it, or they think it's part of the design.
Yes. As artists, we noticed all our mistakes that no one will ever notice unless you point them out.
I've had a near perfect disc that had the ever so slight bleed from a stencil. They didn't notice it, and they put it up on Instagram and all this and shared thank you, Tar Heel Custom Disc, for this amazing disc. But every time I see it come up, every time I see it at a tournament where he waves to the crowd with the disc in his hand, I'm like, there it is, right next to the handle of the sword. It's right there. Please, nobody notice.
No one will notice.
Just me and other dyers, of course.
What? So how did you find out what dog safe discs were dyeable, and how did you settle on what you dye now?
Great question. I literally went out and bought 5 of each in all different plastic types. I experimented. In fact, there are some Hero discs that will die, but it's almost like DX plastic. It will more like shade, and then it will like be gone in 2 weeks. I think that's something that people tend to forget, that when we dye discs, it is always continually dying, and the plastic is sucking in that dye. And that design will never stay perfect forever. I mean, it's physics. It's how the plastic accepts the dye. It is what it is. But some of these plastics soak it up like a sponge, and that initial pop may look great. Give it 2 weeks. That shit's going to be gone. It's going to disappear. And I've had some great discs where when I was first starting out, where it was baseline plastic, and it came out really, really good. The bed was amazing. And I remember I had it in there for 48 hours, and I picked it up, and it literally just slid right off. It was literally just, I'm like, nothing took to this at all. It was in there for 48 hours. It didn't do anything. And I'm thinking to myself, did I not make a good saturation in the lotion? I just didn't know. But then I started to realize, looking at disc golf discs, because at the time I was starting to do both then. I'm like, oh, like the dye acceptance chart, different plastics are going to have different results. So from my own research and my own trying and experimenting, I found which plastics from Hero and Hyperflight took dye. But really, the Hero Disc Super series seems to do the best. It's more attuned to Star and Champion plastics from Innova. But it has some subtle differences, for sure.
So I know they take dye well, but in the profession that you use them in, is there a difference, or do people have specific preferences of like what plastics they like to use?
Great question. In fact, this is a topic I can talk about ad nauseum. It's not even just this type of plastic. It's also the size of the disc. So dog discs come in varying sizes, in anywhere from 120 millimeters all the way up to 235 millimeters. Their standards are 120, 185. 185 is like a great miniature disc for like, I don't know, like a mini Aussie, or maybe dogs with much more smaller stature. Then you have the 215, which bumps up in the size. That's actually this disc right here, is 215 millimeters in diameter. And then you have the 235, which is a little bit bigger still. Those are meant for dogs that are bigger, labs, and any dogs that have a big mouth. You can still throw 185s and 215s for bigger dogs, but it's entirely up to what your dog's preference is in both size and plastic. So there are going to be some dogs that have a softer bite, and maybe a hard plastic like Champion plastic, or what we call canine candy, may just be too hard for their dogs. It bounces off, and they just don't like the hardness of the disc. So something like a Super Aero or a taffy plastic would be better off. They do have a super soft version of the Extra 215 from Hero. That's super soft. Like, that's almost like rubber in feel, and it's very, very grippy as well. So if you're like playing out in the rain, or your dog just likes to slobber over discs, it gets a nice grip, but they don't take dye very well. So that's just, you have to pick and choose your battles. But for me, my dogs tend to prefer the Supersonic 215 from Hero and the Super Star 235 from Hero.
Those are my go-to what I play with my own dogs. I also have the Superhero 235, which is the translucent canine candy, kind of like champion plastic. Those are great for dogs that have a super hard bite and will just tear up any disc they play with. It's the most durable disc. And just like how champion plastic is, it is dyeable, but it takes longer. It has to sit in the bed longer, requires more heat, longer sit. But I've had some really cool designs come from Superhero 235s that it's almost like that see-through plastic. But man, it makes that dye pop really nice, especially in the sunlight. Oh, it looks so good.
How long does a disc typically last?
Depends on the dog.
Yeah.
And my dogs, when I play with them, these discs are reserved for playing and not chomping. Like, they're not chew toys.
Yeah.
Very, very important. That if you want to get into disc dogs, that you reserve these discs for when you're playing in the backyard or playing in the competition or at the park. You don't just let them sit there and chew on it like a chew toy. First off, probably not good for your dog to swallow that plastic, number one. And two, it'll tear up the gums and tear up the teeth. Let them chew on it and bite it when they're playing. Well, that's the best way to do it. But the premium plastics tend to do better, like the Super series with Hero. There is the Hyperflight Jaws series, which is a much more durable plastic as well. And they have a bunch of different, like they have the Z Jaws Fang and the Hyperflex, which is a much more bendable disc. But every company is going to have a variety of different plastics to play with. But it's up to your dog to decide what they want. And you do that by trial and error and figure out what they like.
Yeah. So I'm laughing because now I know how a non-disc golfer feels when a disc golfer is talking about discs. Because all these discs and plastics I don't know about, and you're just spitting out names like,
Yeah.
But that's awesome. So I feel like the dogs don't necessarily chew up the discs, but how safe is a dyed disc for them to use?
A wonderful question, and it's a question I get asked all the time. I take extra special care in cleaning discs after I dye them. I'll put them through about 4 or 5 washes with both a sponge and a magic eraser, and I basically clean it until it runs clean, until I can't get anything else off. Generally speaking, it's very safe because the disc has absorbed the dye, and the only way it's going to become a problem is if the dog is ingesting the plastic. But if your dog is ingesting the plastic, you have bigger problems than the dye that's in it.
Yeah.
The polyethylene blend is probably not good for your dog, but a very good question. And, for disc golf discs, like you've heard stories of someone who's dyed a disc and they gave it to their customer and they didn't wash it well, and then it starts bleeding off to other discs. Dog safe discs, they could bleed if you don't clean them enough. But because the nature of you throwing the disc for your dog and them, having it in their mouth, I've actually looked at the MD5, the safety sheet from Pro Chemical and Dye, and there's a bit of a gray area because their safety sheet is for the dye itself, not for what happens with what you do to the dye with the medium. There have been companies that have been dyeing discs for dogs. I've been playing disc dogs for 8 years now, and my dog hasn't had an issue with it. So I would say it's safe for sure. But definitely, if you're going to be doing dog safe discs, like from Hero or Hyperflight, you really need to clean them exceptionally well. Like, it's got to be so clean that, think of it like Thanksgiving dinner. Like that plate better be spotless, crystal clean. Like when you're scrubbing it with a magic eraser, it better be coming off clean.
Yeah.
where no dye's coming off for sure.
No, that makes absolute sense. And there's dye that the manufacturers use to color the disc, so there's still some pigment or dye in a disc. It's just, for that. So you have 3 partners in your business, and you kind of mentioned their style, but could you elaborate on what style and or dye technique that you guys do or that you think that you have?
Yeah, so our particular style is a little bit all over the place. My technique would be more tuned to, I like bright, vibrant colors. I do some stencils, but I like getting like scientific with it, right? So I like doing the experimentation stuff, color theory, like what complementary colors should go with each other, and then generational beds. I like to go and see how far I can stretch it and what happens when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it. Even after throwing in silicone to make the cells, what can happen when you go 5, 6, 7 generations deep when the silicone is still in there and then you start swirling it around? I've actually, so like how chefs have done, don't recommend doing this indoors, by the way. Like how chefs will flip a pan to like kind of get it to, I've done that to really get the dye to fold over into itself before. Wow. It can be a mess. Would not recommend doing it on carpets, speaking from experience. But yes, what my wife doesn't know doesn't hurt her, right? That's what they say.
She doesn't listen to this, right?
No. She'll listen to about 5 minutes of it and like, I'm done hearing your voice. But yeah, just experimenting. I like being like on the verge of finding where that line is, and trying to push past it and see what's something that no one else has ever done and how can I get other people there.
So what is your current kick for dyeing method right now?
I'm balls deep in Floetrol and cells and different swipes. Absolutely love the scientific and the physics behind it. Just different colors. I just did a all neon color chameleon cell dye that the results were incredible. And I just went another generational bed this morning of that same bed, and just like, I can't not get a good disc out of this bed. Like I could literally just pick one up, drop, put another one in, and it's just going to be fire every time. Like I'm so impressed by how it's going out. There's a couple other beds that I currently have right now. I have an all blues disc. So I have, let's see, Caribbean blue, Sonic blue, flag blue, teal blue, I-dye poly blue, and I did about 5 or 6 generations of that. And then when the blues all started kind of merging together, then I hit it with like a lilac or a neon royal purple and just do an outside border of it and just center saran wrap pull. And now we're cooking with fire now. Now we got something crazy happening. And then you just start doing a little bit of cells here and there, maybe out along the outside, a spiral pattern of cells to the center. And now you get some really crazy designs. And like when the bed translate to the disc and it comes out how you want it to, oh, that's the bee's knees right there. You love to see it.
I loved how enthused you are about this. This is awesome.
Oh yeah, dude. Like it's, and here's the thing. It's funny because I'm sure a lot of dyers actually kind of go through this. There was being in the dog sports world, like there was a period of about 3 or 4 months where I just had events every single weekend, and there was no break. I had putting league on Tuesdays, and then PDGA league on Thursdays, and then Friday, Saturday, we're traveling, and then Monday I'm catching up on work, and I'm like, where will disc dyeing fit in this schedule? So like what ended up happening is I ended up getting a bit of creator's block. I didn't know where to start. So whenever I do that, I take it back to the basics. I'll start off with just a simple spin die and, do a rainbow spin just to get that creative juice flowing. And then maybe I'll try a lollipop. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then I'll go into a lotion bed and just kind of do like a rainbow gradient. For some reason, I tend to gravitate toward rainbow. I just love how the color progression. And then I'll break out some Floetrol and just start mixing up colors. Sometimes I will just make colors and not even make a bed. I'll just experiment with just what happens if I throw a little bit of neon key lime and then a little bit of lemon zest and shake that up and see what kind of color you get from that. And then mix that with let's see, you got a yellow and a green. Let's go with a mix of blue and a purple. And then let's alternate those colors on a white Floetrol bed and then swipe and see what happens. Well, guess what? You might get a little bit muddiness there because those colors don't mix well. But just like that experimentation behind it, it kind of gets those creative juices flowing, gets you out of that funk, that rut, and also, checking out what other fellow dyers are doing to just kind of get that inspiration. Not copying them per se, but just seeing what's out there and seeing like what's gonna just look and go, you know what, that's pretty cool. Let me see if I can figure out how we did that. And maybe that will lead to another thing that leads to another thing. And now you get into the color theory and you find those complementary colors and you get some really, really cool looking dyes.
Yeah. Experimenting, learning from your mistakes is a huge part of learning. And the color wheel and learning your colors of what works together and what makes poop brown seems to be very important as well.
Yes, for sure.
And speaking of colors, what are your favorite colors to use?
Ooh, I am a sucker for Caribbean blue. Caribbean blue was one that when I first started using it, I just could not get any type of good saturation or vibrance out of it. Well, it turns out that I had to increase the amount of dye I was putting in my mixes, and I got to hit it with some heat too. I think that is something that a dyer can do that can absolutely increase the saturation, and that is adding heat, whether it's putting it in under a heat lamp or putting it in a dehydrator, or hitting the bed with your blowtorch. That can absolutely make a big difference. And it took me a long time to learn that. I think it was actually a Facebook post in the Dyers group that someone said, I think it was Daddy Mac that was, or maybe it was Sean Sarge. One of the big boys, in the dyeing world, they said, add heat, it will change your life. And boy, were they right. And it changed my dye game tenfold, for sure.
Yeah, heat does make a big difference. Somewhat of a general question, but how long do you let your bed sit for, and I guess for specific beds?
So, Floetrol beds, I recently got a dehydrator, and I've been playing with the settings because I'll put the dehydrator at a certain temperature, and then an hour later I'll go in and I'll hit it with an infrared thermometer. And while the outside temperature of the dehydrator will say 1, the disc is not getting to that temperature. So I generally like my disc to be somewhere around 105 to 115, 120 at the max. Any hotter, and then you're risking causing the disc to warp. But I like my disc at a higher temp, about anywhere from 98 to 115 is my sweet spot. And depending on the plastic, Star will be anywhere from 60 minutes up to 2 hours. And champion plastic, I usually will hit it for a minimum of 3 hours. But I've gone low and slow on a champion disc for 8 hours on like a heating bed, and I've gotten some really good saturation on it. But a lot of it is, I feel a lot of it is experimentation, like especially between runs of discs. Like it is Star Plastic, but maybe there's just something slightly different in this particular run of plastic that, you know, needs a little bit more heat. And I take notes. I have a spreadsheet that I've tried to keep track of orders in different boxes so I can kind of keep myself organized. But definitely, like, this dyeing has allowed me to focus, which having ADHD is sometimes a problem for me. But when I'm on my game, I almost hyper focus into disc dyeing, and it allows me to put that creative output onto a physical disc, and like I get like instant gratification of like, I made this, not the disc, but I made this dye, and this design is mine, and I get to share that with the world, whether that's me throwing for my dog and getting some wicked awesome pictures of my dog catching a dyed disc, and then everyone says, "Where'd you get that disc?" Right here, baby. That's where it came from. Right from my hands.
Nice. That kind of leads into the next question that I have is, what does disc dyeing mean to you?
It's definitely a means of exploration to an artistic side I never knew I had. During high school, like, I was very much like engineer mindset. Like, my job is in IT, but like I always took electives with the technology teacher, whether it was drafting and design, where it was using T-squares and like doing like architecture or floor plans, or like manufacturing like a product or something like that, or using CAD. That always interests me, but I never took an art elective because it just didn't interest me. Colors did. Like I would love looking at like those acrylic pours. Like I remember for years like looking at YouTube videos of like someone doing a giant canvas of like these acrylic pours, and I'm like, man, I'd love to have one of those on my wall. But yeah, so like it was just, I always had that like scientific mindset. So like this definitely scratches an itch for me, where it's exploring and trying new things, and like, if I do this, it will lead to that. If I do this, this is what happens. Can I repeat this? Is it a repeatable, like almost like the scientific method? Is it something that I can repeat over and over and over again? And guess what? Most of the times, you can't. Not exact. And that's what makes disc dyeing really, really cool, is because every disc, no matter what you do, is going to be truly unique. You'll never, ever get an exact copy unless like you do like a Dymax, but where like it's printed on. But I don't know. Hot take, I guess. I think that's kind of cheating. But some could say the same thing about stencils. You know, if you use a vinyl machine versus hand cut, I will never hand cut anything. Like that ability to draw, not there. Ability to cut with an X-Acto knife, not there. But I can put an image in the Silhouette Studio, and I can, you know, manipulate it into a stencil that I can use. Most of the time, I try and find stuff that is not going to cause trouble with copyright. I know that's a big argument in our community. But for the most time, like if I do something that might be controversial, it's going in my own bag. I'm not selling it. Yeah. Most of the things that I sell are like my own creations and my own designs or interpretations of something. Like there was a guy that he had a Castoplast Berg, and he was really into Adventure Time. So I took the font of Adventure Time and put his name on the disc, and then had 2 of the famous swords from the show and made like a crossing pattern. So like, it wasn't like a taken design, it was used with interpretation, and I added my own flair to it, and it was really, really cool how it came out.
Awesome. But yeah, I think Daddy Mac Dye said this as well, that everybody needs a creative outlet to express. You may not feel like you're creative, or you don't think like you're an artist, but it's I think everybody needs to have that, just to tickle that part of the brain to be well balanced. But yeah,
100% agree.
Where do you get your inspirations or ideas for your disc dies?
My inspiration for dies, a lot of it is just experimentation, and just, what colors are in front of me, because I have a majority, if not all, the colors available to me. So it's just like, let's try this, and this, and let's just see what happens. Like, obviously I'm not going to pick 2 colors that are going to make into a brown, but I try to find complementary colors. But there's enough variation out there when you mix, similar blues or similar oranges or similar reds, that you're going to get a different outcome each time. And then when you come into generational beds, you get even wilder results when you start throwing in wild card dies that shouldn't go in there. Whether it be use of negative space, of using just white Floetrol and just letting it ride from there, like, you can get some really crazy results, often unexpected. And that unexpectedness is one of the driving factors of, like, what is something that I can do that's just going to completely change and flip this upside down. And quite literally, often what it's doing when you're doing those type of negative space saran wrap pulls, you're literally pulling the die from the bottom up to the top, and dragging that white die that was on the top, or the white Floetrol. There is no such thing as white dye. The white Floetrol just kind of covers it, but now you have all that dye below it, that the different densities. So that's where the chameleon cells can really come into play. So just by using a little bit of a tap, tap, tap with some silicone, oh man, that's where the magic comes. And that's where unexpected outcomes will happen. And you will get some cells that literally encompass all the colors you are working with, all in a singular cell. And you're like, I'm done. Like, I think I'm just good with that. So if I could just make that one cell and just explode it out,
yeah. I
haven't quite gotten that good at making a single cell die. But yeah, it's like, okay, let's keep going. Like, that one is amazing. But always, if there is one thing I could recommend to people, is keep that heat on while you're doing those cells. I'll give it time to develop, but add that heat and give it a little helping hand. Especially when you're using multicolors. Sometimes after you do those chameleon taps, sometimes it's really hard to see where you tapped before. So I actually use my light, and I'll put it on an angle so I can kind of see the silicone outline of where the cell will form. But generally speaking, I work in rows, and then we'll add some heat, hit it with a creme brulee torch, and then build up from there. But for the most part, I've done a chameleon cell die, and then after I've done it, I've literally taken it and just swirled it just to see what happened. It was a perfectly good chameleon cell die, but I wanted to see what would happen. I wasn't exactly pleased. I wish I hadn't done it, but like, that's what it's all about. It's all about that experimentation.
I mean, a bed is relatively cheap. So experiment with that. And yeah. In your mind, what is the hardest part about disc tying, and what's the easiest part?
The hardest part is probably getting a hold of discs that people want to throw, especially in disc golf, because a lot of people really want particular molds and in particular weights. And the pandemic didn't do us any favors when disc golf companies were just putting out max weight discs. So for the noodle arms out there that can't really throw max weight discs, it really put a challenge for them. And I remember I had a bunch of disc golf discs where the dies were amazing, but they were in molds that no one really wanted because they already had a bunch of them in their bag. So like a lot of them were destroyers, a lot of them were Mako 3s. I still have a dynamic captain that no one's picked up. Like it's sitting at a local disc golf shop right now, and I check in and I'm like, still on the shelf. I'm like, oh, you poor guy. You'll find a good home eventually. So that's actually something that I kind of found that niche in the disc dog world is that there's a lot less variation in molds. So I can streamline my process and bang out a bunch of different discs that they're mostly the same weights and mold, but I don't have to worry about, oh, well, this person wants a Wraith rather than a Destroyer, or they want the Garrett Gurthie Tour Series Wraith that might be just a little bit more domier than a flat Wraith or something along those lines. Like the disc golf dies, I think are harder because there's so much selection out there, and that there's your Innova fanboys, there's your Trilogy fanboys, there's your MVP fanboys, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like once you find a company that you really enjoy, whether it's just because of the sponsored athletes that they support, or the plastic just feels that good in your hand, or you've thrown everything and you just have a mixed bag of discs that do right for you. Mm-hmm. For me, I went through I even tried a couple Latitude 64 Opto Bite discs, but for me, for disc dog, Hero disc landed in my hands and just never left. For me, I tend to gravitate toward Innova just because Innova and Hero are owned by the same company. But I have a bunch of dynamic discs. I'm a big fan of Kona Montgomery. In fact, her disc is signed right there. That's her Tour Series Mako 3. And I have her, that one's at my work. I have her first disc that she launched when she joined Team Dynamic on my wall at work that she had signed. So big fan of hers. And I also have my Garrett Gurthie Sonic because the Sonic is the same mold I throw for the disc dog. So when I saw a Double G at USDGC, I showed him, I'm like, listen, this is my disc dog disc. And like, he goes like, oh shit. It's like, wow, I could throw this over the lake with no problem.
Nice.
Double G's pretty awesome. He's also one of my favorites.
That is a very interesting perspective of the variations of mold and weights for discs for dogs versus the almost unlimitless amount that we have as disc golfers, which does make it easy for disc dying.
It does, but you're never going to please everyone.
Yeah.
Even in the disc dog world, like sometimes there are like little dogs that have to use the 185s, and for a while they didn't have any in the taffy plastic, so I couldn't dye them. They just wasn't in production, and I had to wait. And then finally, when they came in production, those dogs grew, and now they're throwing for 215. So I had this giant order 185s to the people that wanted them, and all of a sudden their dog decided to grow and triple in size, and now they don't want the 185s anymore. So, but that's the cool thing about this dogs as young pups. You can play disc dog with your young pup and do the foundations to keep it safe. Like if you have a brand new pup, I would not recommend throwing in the air. Keep those forepaws on the ground. Do rollers and little short throws.
Yeah.
But
is there anything that you would like to develop with your disc dyeing craft, or any other direction that you want to go, or experiments that you want to try?
Yes. What I would love to do is I would love to get some of the disc dog discs in the hands of some of the big boys in the game and see what they can do with it. Especially, like, I've struggled with stencils because of the Rings of Hedrick and trying to get that vinyl to really adhere. I've done a bunch of hot dips where, like, I've done just the center of the disc and basically took the rings out, and I would do a stencil dye on the front flight plate, and then after that has been at least gotten the black outline of it, then I'll do some type of outside dye and multi-stage it and I do a shaving cream bed or a lotion bed, and then hand paint the design in the center. I've done that before, but to do like a full size stencil dye where I can tackle those Rings of Hedrick without difficulty, that's something I would love to be able to figure out. I mean, I've been trying, but I've kind of like gotten to impasse, and I'm like, I'm getting like diminished returns here, and I don't know if this is a hurdle that I can overcome. So let's go back to the experimentation of the other stuff and then revisit it when it's. And I've tried different vinyls. I've tried 651. I've tried 631. I've tried the Cricut brand. I've tried the Sizer. I've tried like I said, 0 or 100. You either get everything or you get nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So I went all in and got all this different vinyl and different colors, whether it be matte or glossy, and just none of it would work the way I wanted it to. Like, I've even tried doing what Keith and I think it was Keith. Yeah, I think it was Keith. Where they said, "Oh, put it in like a hot water bath to get it to adhere." Well, it would adhere, but like those rings were still like, it was a point, especially if it was a cut on those rings. Yeah. There's not much you can do about that. Yeah. You have to, even with the adhesion I was trying, just I took a hair dryer to it. I took a heat gun. I've tried it all, but I just could not get it to adhere enough because of those Rings of Hedrick. There's just not much you can do with it.
Yeah, I feel like it's also stencil specific, like highly detailed stencils. Good luck. If it's more basic, I can see it working potentially better. If you do a Huck Lab on that, that's a pretty basic stencil. That. Oh
yeah. I'd worry about a bleed on that though.
Yeah, I mean,
because I worry about, because those rings are so fine. I'd worried that once the dye got in there, it's just gonna feed. Like I have. I'll show it to you later, but there's a disc that I was worrying on. I did one for my own dog, and I had the vinyl just on the edge. And I'm like, I adhesed it. I put in a hot water bath. I used a heat gun, and I thought I had good adhesion. And then I did a hot dip on it, and I thought it was good. I pulled it up and it just ran all like halfway around the ring of the disc. I'm like, oh no, it's ruined.
Well, now you got to think of ways how that could be useful. But now I want to try. But I feel like if you, like when people do the automotive vinyl, they really use the heat gun to deform it to mold to the crevices. So really doing that. And you could try something else besides hot dipping, like the denatured alcohol, brushing that on.
Yeah, I had thought about that too. The reason why I was so married to the hot dip is because for this particular design, I was looking for a true black. Time was kind of against me at that point. I was trying to meet a deadline, and I needed to be able to get that stencil on there and quickly. And I was doing about 30 discs. So I needed something. I needed to hit it rapidly, and I didn't have enough time to hit it with like an alcohol or a lotion dip. or lotion paint.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is what it is, and sometimes you just got to work around or with what you got. So
yeah, for sure. But that's the beauty of this, is that you're forever learning and trying to push those boundaries, and that's something that's frustrating yet enjoyable for me, because I could take that same design and put it on like an Innova Jay where it's nice and flat, and that stencil's going to ride like there's no tomorrow, no problem. Put it on a Supersonic 215 or a Superstar 235 with those reins of Hedrick. Now you're got a challenge you have to work around. But that's what it's all about, working through those and adapting to those challenges and changes.
Absolutely. So if you had to start disc dyeing over again, is there anything that you do differently now, knowing what you know?
I would have expanded my disc golf discs, because at the time I fell into the trap of becoming an Innova fanboy, and I purposely didn't dye other brands until I started seeing other people with like the Opto Glimmer and other like really fantastic plastics that just take dye beautifully, or Lucid plastic, like all these like really nice plastics that just take it really, really well. I wish I didn't close myself off in the beginning, and got a chance to really experiment the way I did with Heroes and got one of everything. Now, kind of hard to do that with disc golf discs because there's so many different companies, but at least gotten one of different plastic types that may have already been known to accept dye well, and then experiment from that. Like the dye acceptance chart that a bunch of people in the community have contributed towards, which have saved us time and money, of course, because the upfront cost of this was not cheap. Like I have like this metal rack holds all my dyes, and it holds my dehydrator on the top, and it's got all my supplies. Like this alone was about like $150. All the dye here, plus all the containers below, it wasn't cheap. I would say the starting cost, that's not even including the vinyl cutter, and not including the plastic, was probably close to $700. When you take into account everything that you get, like the bottles, the measurement container cups, you go in deep. Like I said, 0 or 100, there is no in between.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a free or an affordable, fun hobby here, Tim.
I missed that memo.
But yeah, like anything, it can get expensive fast, but it's cheaper than drugs, at least I think. Maybe. Yes. I don't know.
And more enjoyable, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So the dye acceptance chart, people can find that on the Dyers Guild. I have a current one, and I redid what was existing, so I've been trying to keep that up to date. And now I think I want to add some of those dog safe discs on there as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, I will definitely help you and show you what does and doesn't work.
Fantastic. I will definitely do that. Do you have any imparting wisdoms that you would give either new disc dyers or some experienced disc dyers out there, or tips and tricks?
For the newbies out there, I would definitely take your own path and learn through experimentation. I've actually taken about 3 or 4 dyers under my wing who I saw that were just getting started. I just happened to see them at a disc dog event, and they're talking about it. And I remember she'd asked me a couple of questions, and I'm like, so do you want the short or the long answer? Do you want me to give you the answer, or you want to figure it out yourself? She goes, point me in the direction and let me fly. I'm like, I got you. So I gave her some tips, what dye I used, some of my temperatures, and when she asked, like, well, what about this? And I'm like, go for it. And she actually just started her own company just a couple months ago, and all on her own, she has put up amazing dyes. Like, I think some of them are better than the ones I've done before. And all she needed was just a little bit of encouragement. So Spicy Dogs Disc Dyes, I'll give her a little bit of a plug. Amy, just all she wanted to do was just get into it. And she just needed a little push and encouragement to just do it. Like Bobby says, the difference is doing it, right? Like he was to me, I was to her, and then she took it and ran with it. It's up to you as a dyer to be willing to take that leap and try something new. Yeah.
I feel like the disc dyeing community and disc golf community in general is very positive. My outlook is, someone had to start somewhere. If they ask questions, don't mock them or say, haha, whatever, help them out, help support them, because you never know what words or what actions you do can affect or inspire somebody.
Yes.
I try to keep positive vibes all around, because you never know.
One thing I would also say, for the newbies and even the experienced ones, if there is something that you're not sure of, you can use the search button on the Disc Golf Dyers Facebook page, or the group, I should say. And I bet you'll find about 40 threads. And I've done it too. Like, if I was trying to find the specific vinyl I was looking for, and Orcal 651, okay, that's what I needed to get. Boom. And I got like 15, 20 threads of it. Or if you can't find it there, don't be afraid to ask. And for those of you who have been in the game a lot longer than I have, I have a mantra that I've lived by in dog sports, and it is lift as you climb. Now, what that means is that while you're climbing the ladder of success, lift those around you up with you so that they can be just as good, if not better than you. And when we lift up everyone together, the possibilities are endless.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and I love that. That's awesome. I definitely try to live by that as well. So I know I learned a lot about dog disc sports and dyeing dog discs, and I kind of really want to try with my dogs now.
Do it. You just got to do it.
Yes, just the difference is doing it. Just do it. So thank you for sharing all that information. But now we're going to get to know Tim on a little bit more of a personal level.
So yeah, let's do it.
The first section I have is favorite fave. What is your favorite song and or band?
Favorite band, I've seen them live about 28 times, is Coheed and Cambria.
All right. Nice.
Prog rock band. I actually grew up into a town nearby them. And when I was in high school, I used to go to all their local shows before they made it big, as they say. And as they've released more albums and toured, every time they come around even remotely close, I hit up a show. But I tend to go towards rock and metal. But like if I'm on the course, I'll listen to some EDM or reggae, or I kind of vibe to everything.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So you're a hipster because you knew them before they were cool.
Exactly. 100%. One among the fence.
Yeah. What is your favorite food?
I tend to gravitate towards Italian and Asian. My go-to comfort meal is pho, Vietnamese pho. It's a Vietnamese noodle soup. I have a local shop nearby me that I just walk in and sit down. I don't say anything. They know what I want. And I'm there like twice a week. And it just hits differently. It's so good. Like if I'm in a bad mood or it's just a dreary day, man, a nice big giant bowl of pho. Oh, it's so good.
So where are you located and what is the name of the place?
I'm located in North Carolina, near the Triangle area. And the name of the place is Pho 919. They're located in Morrisville, North Carolina. And if you see them, just tell them Tim sent you. And they'll love it.
Nice.
I'm trying to get them to have my own menu item. They're trying. just it's the Tim special, and they'll know what you want.
There you go. What is your favorite beverage?
I am a big sucker for soda. I'm trying to drink zero sugar soda now, just because of health reasons. But I'm literally working on a Mountain Dew zero sugar. But I got my buddy a Mountain Dew Code Red zero sugar, which is apparently almost impossible to find, but that is god tier. That was the most delicious zero sugar soda I've ever had in my life. If any of you out there are able to find it and send it to me, I will pay you, because on Amazon it was like $35 for a case of 12.
Wow. Huh. Well, now
but yeah, Mountain Dew zero sugar is my god tier drink right now.
Yeah. Yeah, man. When did Code Red come out?
I remember Code Red in high school. Like it was like around like mid 2000s. I remember like 2004, 2005. I remember at my hometown pizzeria, that with like a barbecue chicken slice of pizza and a Code Red. Oh, that was good times. That was living good.
Yeah, man, that's bringing back memories. Anywho, besides the dog sport, disc golf, and disc dyeing, what other hobbies do you have or did you have?
So like I said, 0 to 100 on most things. I did get into a bunch of things. I snowboarded for about 5 or 6 years. I am very heavily involved in gaming, mostly PC gaming. First-person shooters, third-person shooters, sim racing. I do have a full cockpit set up for iRacing, which is super fun. And that's and I also like competition shooting for firearms. So like Steel Challenge, I find that to be super fun. Just getting out plinking steel, that's always fun.
Nice. Do you have a VR headset?
I do. I do have a Vive. I am looking to get one of the new Oculus kits eventually. I like the ability to be mobile and bring it anywhere. It'd be fun at parties and watch people who have never been in VR be in VR.
Yeah.
And then experiencing for the first time. That's always fun.
It is. Man, I need to pull out my VR rig. I have the Oculus CV1. And I also have a sim cockpit, and my game of choice is Dirt Rally.
Yes! I love Dirt Rally. That is so much fun.
So I like rally in general. Like I actually rally across my car, and my dream is to do stage rally, but that's just way too much money. So next best thing, VR and racing sim.
A racing cockpit for sim racing is maybe about a 40th of the cost of a actual rally car, let alone the tires, and when you hit a tree doing about 40 and then you have to tow out, and then, oh, by the way, that's how you got there, so now you're stuck. Unless you rent a truck to transfer it. But that's interesting that you do rally racing. Like I said, I'm a big fan of just racing in general. Rally, F1, NASCAR, MotoGP.
Yeah, I like racing too. I'm just not a fan of when they always go left.
Hey, NASCAR has been going to road courses too.
Yeah.
They're getting better. And with the new cars, say what you will, oval racing is an art. It really is. Yes, it is just left turns, but there's a lot more right turns when you're in the banks than you think.
Yeah, and you have to be very precise because any small mistake can set you back a lot.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, next section that I have. If you had to pick 3 discs to play for the rest of your life at any course, what would those 3 be?
Definitely top of the line is going to be the Mako 3. The Mako 3 is one of my favorite discs of all time. Specifically Kona Montgomery now, but at the time, the Kona Panis Tour Series Mako 3 was a disc that I've hit banned and almost aced like 3 times. I only have 1 ace to my name.
and that was with a Japan Open Hero Disc Aviar, or Aviar, however you say it. It was maybe about 130 yards. No, 130 feet. I'm sorry. In disc dogs we do yards. In disc golf we do feet. It was 130 feet, and I had it was a flex shot that went through a tree and just a herd chain, and I'm like, it was dark out. It was a glow round, so I had no idea that went in. And I remember running over to the basket, almost tripping and dying on a root. and I went there. I'm like, holy smokes, it's in the basket. And that's my only ace.
There's someone hiding by the basket, and they saw it go to the ground. Like, I'm gonna put this in. Dink.
Yeah. So the Aviar definitely would be my second disc. It's my go-to putter. I actually just switched over to the Animal last season, just because my club captain for Capital Area Disc League, Jay Pontier, who's an Innova ambassador, he let me throw it during a putting league one night, and like I was on fire. Just like it felt so good in my hand. You know, anyone who's never thrown an Animal, it's like a beat-in rhino and has a thumb track. So for some reason, I fell in love with it. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd go with the Aviar. That's a more utility disc for me. And then I'd probably go with a Roadrunner. Having a lot of skill throwing rollers for dogs, the Roadrunner for me is a great roller disc. And oftentimes, depending on the course, because North Carolina is known as kind of a wooded course specialty, but when I get to those courses where there's an open hole, I can bomb a roller, and it's go a lot farther than I would if I was trying to throw it. So a Roadrunner would be like that utility driver I can stick with.
That's awesome. It's also kind of interesting / hilarious that it's a Roadrunner, and it's gonna, roll to the hole.
Yeah, perfect for me.
All right, next section, the perfect hole. What has been your most favorite course and or hole that you've played so far?
So the favorite course is one that I helped put blood, sweat, and tear in building it. With a tree clearing, and I didn't get to volunteer as much as I wanted to. But the local course to us that just got awarded the Tim Selinsky Masters in 2024, it's Diavolo in Cary, North Carolina. It was the number 1 rated public course in 2019. It was number 7 in the world, but the top 6 were all private courses or semi-private. It was the number 1 public course in the world in 2020, 2021. So it was really cool. I actually have a memorial disc hanging on my wall from when Diavolo, I should say. It's the devil. And one of the course holes on that, hole 8, is a water shot that has been my absolute bane of existence, because as a lefty, I have to throw an Anheuser shot, and oftentimes it will just get there and then just bomb out and into the drink it goes. So actually my first ever dyed disc is still in there. or someone decided they're going to do maritime law and claim it as their in a tiny ass pond in Cary, North Carolina. They're gonna claim maritime law and say it's theirs, but whatever.
Nice.
If you want my first shitty dye ever, go ahead, it's yours. And it was a dog disc too.
Nice.
So have at it.
So the last section that I have is, if you had to pick a pro disc golfer to play around with and hang out, who would it be and why?
I'll do this. FPO would be Kona Montgomery. So kind of a fun fact. As a hero disc dealer, Kona's mom, Denise Panis, is actually my rep for Hero Disc. So Denise and I would always talk about Kona when she was up and coming. And then when she moved over to Dynamic, like it was because Hero and Innova, them being together, her going over to Dynamic, I knew it was a tough decision for them. But being able to support Kona and still talk to Denise all the time and all the fine folks at Hero who've always supported Tar Heel in sharing all the stuff that we've done. So yeah, definitely Kona for the FPO. For MPO, I'd want to say Double G. But if it would be anyone from disc golf, I may go with the champ, Ken Climo. I would love to see what he would do nowadays. I think everyone shares in that enthusiasm. Would love to see Kenny back involved in the sport because when I was involved, it was just all I saw was Ken Climo this, Ken Climo that, all the discs he had, but I never actually got to see him play.
Well, those are some great choices, and cool that you have some ties with that. So I lied. I have one more question.
Sure.
How did you come up with your business name?
So me being in North Carolina, the Tar Heel State, my disc dog club, Tar Heel Toss and Fetch, it kind of just tied all together with Tar Heel Custom Disc, Tar Heel Toss and Fetch, and my wife actually works at UNC Hospital, which is around the campus, the home of the Tar Heels. So it just kind of came naturally. And it's stuck ever since.
Well, do you have anything else that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, let's actually talk about the history of disc dogs a little bit. The story of how disc dogs came to be is actually a very interesting one. Believe it or not, disc dogs originally got started by a 19-year-old kid at the time, back in 1974, by a gentleman by the name of Alex Stein and his whippet named Ashley. So Alex actually smuggled Ashley into a Los Angeles Dodgers baseball game, and in the middle of the game, they hopped over the fence in the outfield and just started throwing long bombs, and Ashley would jump up and catch it and wow the crowd. And believe it or not, Irv Lander, who was part of the International Disc Association, actually was in attendance of the game. And when Alex actually got arrested, he actually took Ashley and bailed Alex Stein out of jail and reunited him with his dog, or so the legend goes. But yeah, so after that, like, organized sports kind of came with the Ashley Whippet Invitational, Skyhounds, which was one of the original organizations. There's actually a great documentary called Fly High, Story of the Disc Dog. A good friend of mine is a documentarian and did a whole video about it, about the history of disc dogs. So if you want to learn more, definitely check that out, Fly High. It goes really deep into like how disc dogs got started, and it's just really interesting to see how a little plastic disc can change so many lives.
That's awesome. Tim, I've learned so much, and I think you've been the most unique guest on here, and that is awesome. I've been loving your enthusiasm, and I can't wait to see what other work you come out with, and keep up the great work and experimenting and spreading the knowledge and all that good, happy stuff.
That's what it's all about. And I'd like to give a big thanks to Jen and Kevin, my other dyers, of part of Tar Heel Custom Disc, for all their hard work. I wish they could have joined us on the call today, but they're just as important as I am, and us three make a great team. So I'm proud of them.
So where can people find you and your colleagues' work?
So we're on Facebook and Instagram. And we're actually in the talks of opening up a Shopify website to have a storefront with having some free time open up available and being able to do a little bit more volume, we're actually going to be opening up a storefront. Like right now, our preferred method of doing our dies is through flash sales, where we just put up all of our discs at once, and the first person who claims it, it's theirs. And then we take their payment and ship them their discs. But with the amount of volume of discs that we're able to do now between the three of us, we think that it would be able to support the expense of actually having a dedicated website. Maybe I'll talk to Daddy Mac and see if we'll put some discs up on discdying.com as well. We have to kind of explore some options, but it'd be kind of cool to have a virtual storefront for our discs, and rather having to like post our discs on like 5 different Facebook pages to try and get them out there. But yeah, Instagram at Tar Heel Custom Discs, and you'll find me mostly around North Carolina disc golf disc golf courses, and you'll find me at a lot of updog competitions around the country.
That's awesome. So if you do want to consider this, you can put some of your listings on the Guild website as well.
Yeah,
so
I would love to do that.
Feel free to do discdying.com, and if you're interested in the Guild website, I feel like diversity is always a good thing.
Yes, especially if we're going to put out the volume we're anticipating. Spreading the love everywhere is never a bad thing, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so Tim will also be raffling off not 1, but 2 discs. He'll be raffling off a dyed disc for disc golf that humans can use, as well as a dog-safe disc. Now, he is also going to be donating this to a charity. And Tim, if you want to explain a little bit more about that.
Sure. I'm going to be donating the proceeds to the raffle to a good friend of mine's dog rescue, Bone Nose Rescue. That's actually where I got one of my dogs from. She's a good friend, and she does a lot of amazing work in the dog sports world. So, yeah, I'd love to be able to help support her.
So 100% of the proceeds will be going to that charity. So for as little as $1, you could win this raffle, but I know you love those furry pets, so you can definitely submit more money if you want. This raffle will go live when the podcast gets released, and it'll be open for 2 weeks. So you can head to dyersguild.co/raffle to get entered today. Those furry little animals with cute puppy eyes.
Please donate.
Yes. All right, Tim. Well, I, again, greatly appreciate you being on here. I had a blast. I learned a lot, and now I want to do some of the dog disc sports stuff. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, if I ever am in the Wisconsin area, I'll give you a ring, and I'll get you throwing some dog safe discs for your dog.
Yes, absolutely. All right, guys, we will talk to you later. Until next time, bye.